Everything changed in a matter of seconds, or at least for the Carolina Panthers, it is absolutely about to. Welcome to NFL Nexus, everyone. If you're looking to dive deep into the absolute cutting edge of cinematic gridiron analysis, you are in the right place. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button on this explainer, and comment your thoughts down below. And remember, you can directly support what we do here by becoming a channel member today. Listen, what we are examining today, it is not just your standard schedule release. We aren't just doing a typical run-of-the-mill off-season recap. No, what we are looking at is a high-stakes, breathless battle for the absolute survival of a historic franchise. Right now, the Carolina Panthers are standing on a terrifying precipice as they stare down the barrel of the 2026 NFL season. The microscopic decisions they make in the coming days inside that war room and the relentless physical gauntlet they are about to run on the field, it's going to echo through the history of this organization for the next decade. You can literally feel the tension inside the building. The stakes, they have truly never been higher. 8 and 9. I want you to just let that statistic sink in for a moment. 8 wins, 9 losses. In the unforgiving, hyper-competitive landscape of the National Football League, a sub.500 record is usually a definitive death knell, right? I mean, it's a record that typically means packed bags, fired coaches, executives clearing out their offices in the middle of the night, and a frustrated fan base immediately looking toward the college draft for some kind of salvation. But for head coach Dave Canellis and the Carolina Panthers in 2025, it was somehow enough. By the absolute razor-thin margins of a multi-team divisional tiebreaker, they outlasted the 8-9 Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the 8-9 Atlanta Falcons. They claimed the NFC South crown. They actually punched a ticket to the playoffs for the first time since 2017. But let's be entirely, brutally clear with each other here. That record, it's a mirage. It was basically a mathematical glitch in the matrix of the NFL. And as we look closely at the underlying data from our sources, it becomes terrifyingly apparent that an 8-9 record will absolutely not be enough to survive the violent reality of what is coming in 2026.
So the multi-million-dollar question is this: can the Panthers survive the 2026 gauntlet? This isn't just a rhetorical question to throw around on sports talk radio. It is the defining narrative of their entire year. We have to frame the upcoming season not as a standard 18-week schedule, but as a ruthless war of attrition. The margin of error for this team, it is essentially zero. Any slight misstep in the front office is going to immediately ripple onto the field, exposing vulnerabilities that will be mercilessly exploited by superior opponents. The sources lay out a two-part blueprint for how this franchise can avoid a total catastrophic collapse. Part 1 requires a mastermind level of maneuvering in the war room. We're talking desperate, highly complex, season-altering trades. Part 2 is navigating a terrifying 6-game stretch within the conference that is going to test the physical and mental fiber of every single man on this roster. If they fail to execute the first, well, they will be slaughtered in the second.
Part 1. 5 season-altering trades.
Okay, so the Carolina Panthers have noticeably abstained from all the wild trade talks this offseason. While blockbuster deals and massive contract restructures have completely shaken the rest of the league, Carolina has just stood completely still in the shadows. But according to the deep analysis provided by Yardbarker, that silence, it has to break immediately. Standing still is no longer an option. The theoretical off-season moves required here are like a delicate, high-stakes game of mathematical chess. 2 massive pieces out, 3 pivotal pieces in. Xavier Legette and Chuba Hubbard are the sacrificial pieces required to clear the board and free up the vital cap space and operational bandwidth the team desperately needs. In return, the Panthers absolutely must bring in Alvin Kamara from the division rival Saints, Cole Kmet from the Bears, and Daron Payne from the Commanders. It is a radical, microscopic restructuring of the roster. Honestly, it's like a complete heart transplant for a team operating on life support. Let's break down the exact tactical details of why these specific, highly targeted strikes are their only hope for sustained relevance. It all starts in the wide receiver room. Trading Xavier Legette to the Philadelphia Eagles is the ultimate textbook definition of addition by subtraction. The underlying logic here is cold, calculated, and entirely necessary. Look, Legette may still possess the raw physical profile and straight-line speed of a capable receiver, but the Eagles are in a significantly better position to coax that specific talent out of him right now. Why? Because Philadelphia just suffered a massive, catastrophic blow, losing their big-bodied, ultra-physical X receiver in A.J. Brown. They are literally desperate for a player who can attempt to win those contested catches on the boundary. Carolina has to surgically capitalize on that exact desperation. By dumping Leggett, the Panthers instantly open up crucial, season-defining offensive snaps for the younger, much hungrier receivers currently buried down the depth chart. Guys like Chris Brazzell and Jimmy Horn, whose route running trees are far more sophisticated. Keeping Leggett on the roster only stifles the future development of this offense. Trading him sparks it. Now, the tension mounts significantly when we analyze the backfield. The grim, undeniable reality is that the Panthers simply do not possess a reliable running back room, yet they are inexplicably operating as if they do. On one side of the equation, you have Chuba Hubbard. He is sitting on a costly contract extension that, thanks in large part to a deeply concerning string of reoccurring lower body injuries and a mounting pile of dead cap money, has immediately aged incredibly poorly. He is a financial and operational anchor that is actively holding their wide zone blocking scheme back. On the other side, you have the silver bullet, Alvin Kamara. Trading for Kamara fixes the struggling backfield overnight. Yes, the logistics of having several running backs on the roster is a bit of a small administrative hurdle, but it is nothing compared to the violent impact Kamara brings. Even at this later stage in his career, he is a highly impactful backup running back and an absolutely lethal target out of the backfield. I mean, we're talking about someone who has historically caught 7 to 8 passes a game against Carolina, just slicing defenses apart underneath. But here's the stark reality of the cap sheet. They cannot move Hubbard's money unless they secure Kamara first. It is a terrifying, high-wire act. Finally, this survival blueprint calls for heavily reinforcing the interior trenches and the completely neglected tight end position. Let's be real, the Panthers have not had a genuinely threatening tight end in years. It is an offensive wasteland. Enter Cole Kmet. The Chicago Bears currently have this massive surplus of young tight ends, which makes Kmet highly expendable. His contract situation features backloaded guaranteed money that isn't ideal for Chicago, which is exactly why they would part with him for draft capital. Make no mistake about it, Kmet's ability to win the middle of the field is instantly better than all 3 tight ends currently on the Panthers roster combined. Then there's the brewing defensive line crisis. Deshaun Warren's bad form was already a huge issue, but his recent, serious cervical neck injury, an injury that severely compromises the anchor and leverage required in those brutal interior trenches, has pushed their defensive depth to the absolute brink. Daron Payne is currently locked in a bitter public contract standoff over guaranteed money with the Washington Commanders. Bringing Payne into the fold doesn't just alleviate the crisis. His raw power and explosive first step transforms the defensive line into a devastating weapon.
Part 2. The 6-game gauntlet.
But here's the thing. Even if the front office executes every single one of those microscopic trades perfectly, it merely buys them a ticket to the main event. The path that lies ahead in the regular season is nothing short of terrifying. Out of the entire 18-week marathon, there are 6 hyper-specific conference games that will act as the ultimate judge, jury, and executioner for the Carolina Panthers. If they fail in these 6 weeks, the season is over, and the dream of a sustained dynasty is dead on arrival. You've got to understand this exact chronological path of destruction. It starts under the primetime lights in Week 4 against the Detroit Lions. It moves to a critical divisional hold-serve moment in Week 7 against the Buccaneers. Week 8 takes them into the freezing hostility of Green Bay. Week 13 sends them into the cursed, deafening noise of Minnesota. Week 14 forces a bloody confrontation with their absolute kryptonite, the New Orleans Saints. And finally, Week 18, a potential sudden death finale against the Atlanta Falcons. Let's look closer at the sheer madness embedded in these matchups.
Week 4 brings a wild, deeply unsettling contrast that perfectly captures the structural absurdity of the NFL right now. It will be a battle of 2 reigning division champions, but the underlying numbers paint a haunting picture. In 2025, the Detroit Lions finished with a 9-8 record, and that placed them dead last in the powerhouse NFC North, where every single team finished with a winning record. Meanwhile, the Carolina Panthers finished 8-9, and that was somehow enough to win the entire NFC South. Think about that for a second. The team that finished last in their division was structurally and mathematically superior to the team that wore the crown in the South. And the last time these 2 organizations collided, the Lions orchestrated a humiliating, surgical 42-24 victory in 2023, with Jared Goff completely carving up the Panthers secondary. The psychological tension before this Week 4 Sunday night clash is going to be suffocating.
And that tension only severely intensifies when the Panthers are forced to leave the relative safety of Bank of America Stadium. 5-12. That is head coach Dave Canales' combined road record dating all the way back to 2024. 5 lonely wins, 12 devastating losses. Last year alone, they were an abysmal 3-6 on the road, managing away victories only against vastly inferior, disorganized squads like the Jets and the Falcons. This single statistic exposes a massive, glaring vulnerability in the team's culture.
When this roster steps outside of Charlotte into hostile, high-decibel environments, they structurally crumble. And in 2026, the specific road trips they have to face are the stuff of pure defensive nightmares.
The road trip revenge games against the NFC North are going to be incredibly brutal. In Week 8, they must travel to the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field to face the Green Bay Packers. Let me remind you exactly what happened in 2025. One of the biggest, most shocking victories of Carolina's entire season was a miraculous, last-second 16-13 triumph over the Packers in Week 9. Believe me, Green Bay head coach Matt LaFleur has absolutely not forgotten. He wants blood, and walking into Green Bay with a massive target on your back is a recipe for absolute disaster. Then, in Week 13, they must travel to face the Minnesota Vikings. The Panthers' recent history on the cursed grounds of Minnesota is completely devoid of hope. They have dropped 3 straight games in this series, dating all the way back to 2020. Overcoming Kevin O'Connell's squad in their own building, facing the deafening skull chants and the chaotic zero-blitz packages designed by Brian Flores that have historically melted the Panthers' offensive line into momentum-killing strip sacks, is going to require absolute flawless execution. And flawless execution on the road is something Carolina has severely lacked.
But as terrifying and physically exhausting as those out-of-division road games against the NFC North will be, we must now transition to the ruthless, incestuous warfare of their own division, the NFC South. This isn't just standard football, guys. It is a violent bloodbath where the margins are razor-thin and deeply familiar foes know exactly how to relentlessly exploit your deepest, most hidden weaknesses. Every single divisional game is a zero-sum war of attrition that just leaves rosters battered and broken. And honestly, nothing illustrates the sheer chaotic nature of that warfare better than this impossible, staggering statistic right here. 3-3. In the 2025 season, every single team in the NFC South, the Panthers, the Buccaneers, the Falcons, and the last-place 6-11 Saints, finished with this exact same divisional record of 3 wins and 3 losses against each other. It was a perfect, bloody stalemate. What this deeply unsettling data tells us is that absolutely no one is safe. Past performance means absolutely nothing when these 4 specific teams collide. The intimate familiarity between the coaching staffs breeds this chaotic parity. Divisional coordinators know exactly which defensive fronts confuse Bryce Young, and they know exactly how to disguise coverages to force him off his spot. Any team in this division can ruin another season on any given Sunday.
Within that chaos, we find 2 massive, defining extremes that will dictate Carolina's ultimate fate. First, the terrifying Week 14 matchup against their ultimate kryptonite, the New Orleans Saints. Despite finishing a dismal 6-11 last year, the Saints completely swept Bryce Young and the Panthers in 2025. The Saints' interior defensive pressure consistently baffles Young, forcing him into rushed, dangerous throws. Carolina has now dropped 3 straight games in the suffocating environment of the Superdome. It is a psychological curse they simply cannot seem to break. But then, contrast that immense struggle with their high-stakes Week 18 finale against the Atlanta Falcons. Here, the Panthers possess total, undeniable mastery. Carolina actually swept Atlanta in 2025 for the first time since 2013. They are currently riding a 3-game win streak against them that includes a dominant 30-0 shutout way back in 2005 and 2 recent, thrilling overtime victories. That Week 18 game won't just be a bitter rivalry match. Based on the math, it will highly likely be the sudden death decider for the entire NFC playoff picture. I want you to listen to this quote from the source material very, very carefully. For the second time in the past 4 seasons, the NFC South has been won by a team with a sub-.500 record. Let the grim historical reality of that sustained mediocrity fully sink in. In 2022, it was the 8-9 Buccaneers. In 2025, it was the 8-9 Panthers. For years, the division has been a kingdom of the blind, ruled by the one-eyed man. But the rest of the NFC? It is rapidly strengthening. Quarterback play across the conference is elevating. That small, forgiving window of scraping into the postseason with a losing record is violently slamming shut. Surviving 2026 means genuinely rising above the mediocrity, not just outlasting it. Part 3. The final verdicts. Zooming out from the microscopic details of the individual trades and the week-by-week brutality of the gauntlet, we have to look at the massive, historical stakes resting directly on the shoulders of the Carolina franchise today. Everything we've discussed, the desperation in the war room, the terrifying road games, the razor-thin margins of the NFC South, it all culminates right here. The fact of the matter is this: consecutive playoff appearances haven't happened in Carolina since the legendary 2013 to 2015 seasons.
back when the franchise was anchored by prime Cam Newton and Luke Kuechly, making their dominant run to Super Bowl 50. This single historical fact proves just how incredibly rare and impossibly difficult it is to build a sustained, winning dynasty in Charlotte. One playoff appearance, that can be a fluke. It can be a mere byproduct of a collapsing division. But 2 consecutive appearances, that proves the culture has been fundamentally, permanently changed. The crushing weight of an entire decade of offensive inconsistency is hanging directly over Dave Canales, Bryce Young, and this front office right now. To achieve back-to-back playoff berths in 2026, they don't just have to beat their opponents. They literally have to defy history itself.
So, we are left with the ultimate lingering question hanging over the organization. Will Carolina finally pull the trigger on these necessary, season-altering trades? Will they aggressively acquire Kamara, Kmet, and Payne to patch their fatal flaws? Will they find a way to conquer the suffocating ghosts of Lambeau and Minnesota? Or will history simply repeat itself in a devastating, all-too-familiar collapse? The clock is ticking. The 2026 gauntlet waits. That wraps up today's deep dive explainer on NFL Nexus. I want to know exactly what you think. Drop into the comments right now and tell me if the Panthers can physically and mentally survive 2026. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this explainer, and comment your thoughts below. And if you love this level of intense cinematic gridiron analysis, support the channel directly by becoming a channel member today. Until next time, keep your eyes on the gridiron. The season is almost here.